Where things stand in the Middle East. For more on what is happening, we're joined by Republican Congressman Greg Murphy and Democrat Congresswoman Deborah Ross, both of North Carolina. Thank you both for coming in. Got a few different topics I want to hit on, but we do want to start with the Middle East. Congressman, let me start with you because you expressed support for the U.S.'s attack over the weekend. We have seen how Iran has responded just today. Are you comfortable if this becomes a full-fledged war? I mean, we'll see how the U.S. responds, but are you comfortable if it reaches that point?
Well, hopefully that's not the case. No one's ever comfortable with war. I mean, that's not the case. But sadly enough, you know, I'm a surgeon. I like to prevent things before rather than treat them, and this has been a long time in coming. Iran cannot be trusted with a nuclear device, be it in the Middle East or, God forbid, with a dirty bomb or something in our own country. And so, sadly enough, you know, the president tried to negotiate with them, and they just simply would not do it. So you have to act at some point. You cannot allow, and I think the world understands this, and there's consensus in this. Iran could not be allowed to have a bomb. Now, what happened today with Qatar? I think it had to be done. It was saving face measure. They called Qatar and said it was coming. And essentially, to my understanding, minimal damage was done. But what happened needed to happen.
Should the president respond to what happened in Qatar?
I hope not. I hope not. I think it's time for de-escalation. I think that we did what needed to be done. We totally eradicated, or hopefully so, Iran's nuclear program, and I think we should hopefully let it stand at that.
Congresswoman, you said in a statement over the weekend that the unilateral action by the U.S. was unlawful and unconstitutional. Congress is getting an intelligence briefing on this tomorrow. Is there any information you could learn from that you think would have justified the U.S. doing this action in Iran without congressional approval?
There's no justification for taking this kind of military action without at least informing or, even better, under the law, getting congressional approval. I completely agree with Congressman Murphy. Iran should never have a nuclear weapon. Part of the reason why Iran was closer to getting a nuclear weapon is because President Trump in his first administration tore up the Iran nuclear deal. And then, lo and behold, Iran gets closer to having a nuclear weapon, and then the president, without consulting with Congress, without getting any congressional approval, just decides to go and blow up Iranian nuclear sites. It might have been the right thing to do, but it was the wrong way to do it. And it sets a very dangerous precedent. And of course, we don't know where this will go. We are finally going to get that briefing. But what it would be nice to have is a bipartisan consensus of Congress about whatever actions will happen.
Well, Congressman, there are a number of people in your party that agree with the Congresswoman over the weekend. Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, will put it up on the screen, said Trump's MAGA agenda included these key promises: no more foreign wars, no more regime change, world peace, and this is what the people voted for. Only 6 months in, and we are back into foreign wars, regime change, and World War III. We're not at World War III, and I know you disagree with the Congresswoman on a number of issues, but the president clearly did run on an agenda of peace. Does this not go against that?
Yeah, sometimes you have to be strong to be peaceful. That's what the agenda has always been. That's how the Cold War kept us out of from nuclear war for over 60 years. So, you know, I think we have precedent for this. Obama did this in Libya. If we had tried to pull Congress together, Rashid Tlaib, one of those people, would have leaked this out immediately. And so, yes, I understand the subtleties of this, but you preserve peace by taking out the person who's going to cause the war. And that's what needed to be done. And yeah, we can have the armchair quarterbacks talk about it later, whether it was needed to be done or not. It absolutely needed to be done. And I think in the end, we'll have saved millions of lives.
There has been concern, Congresswoman, from Democrats and under previous Democratic presidents, and Senator Kaine, I know, has brought this up in the past, that you need congressional approval before the president decides to go into another country. Is there sort of both sides where you can point to concern on this?
Absolutely. Both sides, on both sides we agree that Congress needed to be consulted, and Congress has the authority to declare war. It would be an entirely different thing if Iran had attacked us first and we did this in self-defense. Iran had committed no action against the United States. Iran hates the United States. We wanted to get rid of their nuclear weapons, but we were the folks who started this. That is the difference.
I'm going to disagree vehemently with you. Iran killed more than 600 Americans during the Iraq War. Iran, via its proxies, has attacked the USS Cole, has attacked us many, many times. Many, many times. And if we were to wait for Iran to drop a nuclear bomb, then you would have World War III. You know, sometimes you have to take out the bully first before they can cause the damage, and this is what was done.
We have a constitution. We have an international order. Again, no fan of Iran. Very happy to get rid of the Iranian nuclear program. Should have been done diplomatically and not had that ripped up. Fine to have it happen militarily, but not without the consent or knowledge of Congress.
Congresswoman and Congressman, this debate's going to play out throughout the week here. We're going to continue to follow it. We're going to come back after the break with an issue where there's some bipartisan agreement. This, not so much, but on this issue there is. We'll tell you about what that is next. And thanks for staying with us here on Capitol tonight. I'm Ruben Jones inside our nation's Capitol this evening. Before we continue our conversation with Congresswoman Deborah Ross and Congressman Greg Murphy, I want to tell you a quick story to set this up here. So if you're a regular viewer of Spectrum News for the past few years, you have no doubt seen our coverage of the situation at Camp Lejeune or Camp Lejeune, however way you pronounce it, the toxic water situation that played out decades ago. For years, the people who were exposed to that toxic water were seeking justice, compensation from the federal government. Well, they got the pathway to do that 3 years ago through what's known as the PACT Act, which was passed from Republicans and Democrats here in Congress. 3 years, though, since that bill passed, very few people have actually gotten money from the federal government, and it is stalled in the court system in North Carolina. And by the way, we're not talking about just people in North Carolina. There are people who were exposed that live around the country as well. Let's bring back the members of Congress here. Congresswoman, let me start with you. You all have just introduced, bipartisan here, this new bill in the House that seeks to expedite this process. What does the bill do to speed up the process?
Well, first, I'm very happy to be working with Congressman Murphy on this and others from the North Carolina delegation in a bipartisan way. All of these cases have to be heard in one court under the current law. This will allow more courts to hear the cases. So they've had a logjam in one of the busiest courts. It also allows explicitly for jury trials and makes it very clear what attorney's fees will be and creates an incentive for settlement with those attorney's fees. We're hoping that these technical fixes will be the difference between people having to wait for justice, potentially die while they're waiting for justice, and be able to get access to the courts and the remedies that they need as soon as possible.
And just a reminder, our viewers here, why is this so delayed right now? Why is it stuck in the court?
It's delayed because only one court can hear the cases, and because there has been a question about whether or not jury trials are allowed, how attorney's fees are awarded, a whole bunch of procedural things that hold it up. But really, that issue of the one court is probably one of the biggest issues.
Well, and meanwhile, Congressman, 3 years here now, and there are people who have been exposed that have not only continued to get sick, but they have died waiting on this compensation, and it has still not come.
Sure.
How big of an issue is this?
It's a major issue, and you know, this is the perfect example of when government does something wrong, it's up to government to fix it. And sadly enough, it literally took a law to do that. This is not a good show. It's not good showing on our government, and the fact that this was not adjudicated quicker is also not a good showing. You know, no legislation is perfect, and when the first bill came out, there were some glitches, and this is what it's taken a while to try to fix the glitch. And as Congresswoman Ross said, the hope and the prayer for this is that now this will glide or will grease the slide rather, to just make this accessible for the people that were damaged, or injured.
This was introduced in the Senate, I think about maybe 2 months ago or so. Senator Tom Tillis, I believe. I think Senator Budd is on that too. Not introduced in the House. It took a little while. How come?
Yeah, there were some problems, I think, with the House, with the Senate version, that about not only about jurisdictions, but also causation as to could anybody who literally walked through Camp Lejeune for 24 hours seek compensation, or were there just a better idea of really who the victims were? And I think honing that down and getting to the play-in from all the different constituencies that are involved in this. Took a little while for agreements, but I think what we're introducing now really is going to satisfy what their injured people need.
And one of the things that was really important was to get as many people on the Judiciary Committee on both sides of the aisle onto this bill. And I think we've really done a good job of that, because that's where the bill will go. And it's hard to get legislation through, but if you have a bipartisan bill in the Judiciary Committee, you have a really good chance of success.
Well, and what this also does is it codifies the attorney cap, because this is a concern I've heard, is that people say they're being charged at a cap that is attorney rate that is much higher than what this codifies, which is 20% for legal settlements, 25% for trials. So there's a concern there on that front.
Right, and there's agreement that this is a good way to do it. And again, the attorney's fees are lower for settlement. So that encourages settlement, because it's the client who can decide what they think is the fair compensation.
Are we going to get a vote on this? I mean, this has been talked about for a while. We know the problems.
Well, we're
out there.
submitting it either today or tomorrow, and as Congresswoman just said, this has now gotten bipartisan support on the Committee of Jurisdiction on Judiciary. So I imagine this moves pretty quickly.
Okay, Congressman Greg Murphy, Congresswoman Deb Ross, keep us updated on it. And thank you for the extended conversation.
Absolutely.